So thank you so much for coming, and thank you for those who are involved in the preparation. Jessica, Yumi, and Pastor Rich, you were very good at helping me while I was preparing the message. I told Jessica, thank you for being my third eye. You need that third eye. There is really nothing as good as doing church as a team. My prayer this morning is that God will open the eyes of our hearts and let His Spirit minister to our spirit in such a way that He wants us to listen and respond to Him. Last Sunday, Bob took us through the last series of Micah as he looked at finding a path through discouragement. Apparently, we met discouragement at the basketball court right after the service. My son was not shooting enough, as he always does. He was disappointed to the point of shedding tears. But given the timely message that we had heard, we found a path to encourage him. Later in the day, he came with good news. He said, "Finally, everything went well. My friend joined me and figured out that my hand position was not quite right." I felt his sense of satisfaction and was very grateful to God for friends who show up when we are discouraged. Today, we start a new series, Serving with Joy. I will use passion in place of joy for today's message. Serving, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, means to perform duties or services for another person. A person who is in service is called a servant. The word servant does not come, the word servant comes across sometimes in a way that we don't like. It has an unpleasant, unimportant, even belittling feeling. Many see it as a low position, perhaps something that you do if you can't do anything else. But Jesus teaches otherwise, as we read from Matthew 20, verse 20 to 28. In this passage, we find James and John's mother's request and the king's, that is Jesus' reply. The request prompts a response from the disciples. Jesus is going to use the mother's request and the response of the disciples for a teaching moment to teach about true biblical leadership. What we will commonly refer to as servant leadership in today's message. In verse 17 and 19, Jesus announced his crucifixion and resurrection for the third time. Yet, we still see the selfish request. This is how much James and John were determined to get the power and glory of whatever it takes to have the kingdom. They had false misconceptions of what Jesus was talking about. The cup meant his suffering, and baptism meant his death. There was imminent suffering, death, and resurrection ahead. Now, not all ambitions are wrong, but there's a singular ambition that the Bible allows and applauds. It says, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." That is in Matthew 6, verse 33. Now, this resonates very well with what William Carey says. He says, and it's on the slide. It says, "Attempt great things for God. Expect great things from God." What is reflected among the disciples, however, is false ambition, which is self-seeking, self-serving, and includes deception. Are you willing to lie to get what you want? Is it your ambition to serve yourself or serve others? False ambition is deceptive and is often associated with using and abusing those you are supposed to love and serve. That is, manipulating and using people to get what you want. The other 10 disciples felt an exaggerated sense of entitlement because they were in the same inner circle as Jesus. Feeling the foot of James and John on their neck, they were greatly displeased and perhaps thinking, "Who who do you think you are? James and John, who do you think you are? Why should you be in charge? You don't deserve these seats. They actually wanted the position for themselves, or perhaps they regretted not having asked first. We see growing jealousy and rivalry for the position. Now, Jesus in verse 25, he calls them and says, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you." Here, Jesus presents two views of leadership, the worldly view and the godly view. He shows how worldly bosses and authorities often treat people. They are tyrants, pushing and bossing people around. They're not interested in the people, but want to use them to get what they want. It's not sin to want a position of authority. It is not sin to want a position of responsibility. It is not wrong to supervise your minors. However, because, authority was instituted for the sake of order. However, sin comes when you use positions of authority to lord over other people, assuming the role of rulers. This is not what God intended for humanity right from creation. It is therefore important to understand the importance of the value of a servant leadership in God's kingdom. In this chapter, the king is headed for the cross as a servant. It is a paradox because the use of the term king and servant together does not make sense in our way of thinking. The notion of king-servant becomes clearer when we understand what is meant by the concept of kingdom servant leadership that began in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, when God led man in the form of male and female to have dominion. Genesis 1:26 says, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our own image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." God created you and me to dominate. The word dominate means to govern, to manage, to lead, to have control over, and to master. However, man was given dominion, but not over one another. The scripture says, "So they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground," not over other human beings. That means you have been built with leadership. The concept of leadership has been misinterpreted to think of dominating or controlling people, but really, it's not usurping authority over others. So then, what is true servant leadership? To understand the concept of servant leadership, it is important to look at the attitudes of a leader. Attitudes of a leader. According to Miles Monroe, attitude is the mindset or the mental conditioning that determines our interpretation of and response to our environments. I repeat that. Attitude is the mindset or mental conditioning that determines our interpretation of and response to our environments. In essence, attitude is the manifestation of who you are. Solomon sums it in Proverbs 23, verse 7, when he says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." In his heart to imply your subconscious mind. The way you think in your subconscious mind, so you are. Leaders have a simple distinction because of the way they think. They think differently. They were followers, but what made them cross the line was the attitude that influences people. If we want to be impactful, we have to develop a certain way of thinking and perception of the way we think about ourselves and see the world. This is called the spirit of leadership. The lion has that spirit. The word spirit refers to attitude. Now let's look at the slide. I think it will help us. That's the lion pouncing on the elephant. Now, the amazing thing about the lion is that it lacks the advantages that other animals in the jungle have. It is not taller than the giraffe, or bigger than the elephant, or heavier than the hippo. But when he shows up, they all run away. What does that mean? You do not need any kind of advantage to be a leader. The lion cancels any of your excuses. You could be saying, I'm short, I'm not tall, I didn't go to that school, I don't speak well. You give all these excuses, but it's all about attitude. When a lion sees an elephant, he sees food. The elephant, look at him. The elephant is 10 times the size of a lion and has more power. One step on his feet could destroy the lion, but the lion is not intimidated by any of this. What he sees is food, and he acts the way he thinks, which prompts him to attack. It's vice versa for the elephant. When he sees the lion, he sees an eater. Similarly, the elephant is controlled by the way he thinks, but he's a victim of his thoughts. And the advantages he has over the lion do not work for him. It doesn't matter what advantage or disadvantage you have. It's your attitude that makes you see circumstances differently. Attitude is the product of that belief. You can't have attitude beyond your belief. In other words, attitude comes from your belief system. The lion is the king because of what he believes about himself and what he believes about his prey. His attitude produces certain behaviors that stretch him beyond the limitations of the norm. I suppose that is the contrast that Jesus is drawing in Matthew 20, verse 26 and verse 27. It says, "Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your slave. And whoever wants to be first, I interchange the words. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be your slave." Now, there's a contrast between great in verse 26 and first in verse 27. There's a contrast between servant in verse 26 and slave in verse 27. The great is the minister, the occasional minister, temporal servant. The slave is a slave by choice. He's a bond slave. He's bound to his master every moment. He's dedicated to his lifelong service. Jesus gives the impression that some provide occasional service and some provide continual service. Look at that and figure out, where do I belong? He says, do you want to be great? Then provide occasional service. Do you want to be the greatest? Then provide continual service. Verse 28 gives the greatest reflection of a slave. Jesus embraces the 5 S's: selflessness, sacrifice, service, suffering, and substitute for you and me. He goes ahead to invite the disciples to do exactly the same if they want to be great. And Paul, however, even though he was not there during the Jesus time, has tested it all, and he's inviting us in Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 and 7. He says, you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling on. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. Now, what constitutes this attitude of a servant leader, or let's say a slave leader? The first attitude, the attitude of purpose. The attitude of purpose is the first attribute that separates followers from leaders. True leadership is born with a sense of purpose. Purpose is discovering the reason for your existence and therefore cannot be taught. It is the original intent for why you were created. When purpose is discovered, then a leader is born. Why? Because purpose provides an assignment for life and a sense of significance. Servant leadership requires that we discover our purpose and the specific contributions we were destined to make to our generations and the world. Purpose is the key to your passion, and it has no size to it. No matter your position in life or in an organization, you must relate your sense of purpose and approach it with passion. Many of us may not have realized our purpose in life because it has been trapped by our environment. It could be the people's opinion, it could be people around you with their opinions, it could be culture, it could be tradition, it could be your spouse, it could be your workmates, whatever it is, or whoever it is. That explains why we possess the capacity to lead, but we have lost the will to lead. I repeat that. That explains why we possess the capacity to lead, yes, but we have lost the will to lead. The sad part is that many people die without leaving the cage of how society defines them. We all have something to give that is unique to us. Some of you got several gifts or capabilities. Try and focus on one. Make it a primary gift and refine it. Refining comes with a cost. Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to drink the cup? Are you willing to wake up when the rest of the world is sleeping? Working on your purpose requires obedience, sacrifice, discipline, and commitment. You go to work on yourself through learning and knowing and understanding the Bible and even reading books. The cost involved is why people won't ask for greatness. Jesus asked James and John in verse 22, "You have no idea what you're asking about. Can you really drink the cup I'm going to drink?" And then they answered, out of ignorance, "We can." Jesus knew how tough it would be because it meant entering into suffering and death. It called for a conscious and deliberate decision to embrace the discipline of, the obedience to Christ and death of self. As we serve, it will not be easy. There's no promise that it will be easy. But let us ask for God's will above our personal comfort, above self-indulgence, above extravagance, and for his grace as we give our purpose the time and energy to make it better than serve it to the world. We could be familiar with the word GOAT, G-O-A-T, which means greatest of all time. It's a name that is crowned on top world players. Honestly, I perceive them as born slaves. They are not living for themselves anymore, but for their purpose. The name GOAT comes from the price they pay, but the returns are great. We pay dearly to watch them. At the ongoing US Opens, the cheapest ticket is about $350 to $400. Compared to the past 2 years, there was a breaking record of attendance and TV viewers for the opening match between Serena and Ajla. That is how much people appreciate excellent service. Now, let me bring the point close to home with our very own people here at KBF. The late Mrs. Eri Makishima served and gave her best to take care of children. You could tell the impact she had on our community from the respect she received when her body was brought here to pay her the last respect. I was here, and this hall was fully packed. Her service and dedication reminds me of Dorcas in Acts chapter 9, verse 36 to 42. She was known for her good works and acts of mercy that prompted her community to ask Peter to raise her from the dead. And Peter did. Your gift makes you valuable, and serving it is your responsibility. The better you serve your gift, the greater, or let's say, the greatest you become. The second attitude, the attitude of passion. Passion is a deep certainty that you need to do something. It comes with deep convictions in your beliefs. If you believe that you have discovered what you're supposed to do, it creates passion because you have a reason to pursue something that gives your life meaning. If opposition stands in your way, your destiny still pulls you in the direction of your desire because you can't imagine not fulfilling it. Why? Because, let's look at another slide, because your passion produces resilience to go for it. Your passion overcomes resistance and pain. Your passion is your source of determination. Your passion is an incubator of courage. Your passion is stronger than opposition. Your passion, and it's because of this passion that Jesus paid the price. He gave his life as a ransom for us all. Like a lion focused on its prey, passion serves as the driving force for motivation that sustains the focus of the leader. It doesn't need the right conditions to move forward because passion is internally generated and is not affected by external conditions. Passion is the juice for living. It helps us rise above our daily routines. Without passion, you lack energy, and boredom infects your mind and life. Your life becomes, you see life as daily. You go to work just to earn money to pay bills. You have no motivation regarding your job, your spouse, education, or personal development. If you're not motivated, then you will become a weight or a burden to others. You will pull on their energy. You will drag yourself when your supervisor asks you to do something. You do work because the boss told you to do. Now, it will change our mind towards our job dynamically if every day we go to work. It will change our mind toward our jobs dynamically if every day when we go to work, we will think, I am going today to serve you, God. This is what you have given me to do right now. Even if you don't like your work, do it unto the Lord. Ephesians 6:7 says, do your work with enthusiasm. Work as if you are serving the Lord. When we do it that way, then we put ourselves in a position for God to promote us to another level. Your workplace will be a character test. We need to be grateful where we are and bloom where we are planted. God likes passionate people. In Revelation 3:16, he says, we read of his distaste for those who are lukewarm. He says, I know your deeds, that you're neither cold nor hot. I wish you are either one or the other. So because you're lukewarm, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. Let us not be people who are satisfied with lesser existence. Am I setting the bar too high for you? Please relax. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The best way to begin is by volunteering. It could be here or it could be outside there. I have great news for you today. We have a ministry fair on the 18th of this month. Come check it out and find something that fits you. Are you looking into the hospitality industry in the future? Then volunteer as an usher and soften your muscles by smiling at people as they come in for the service. Just stand there, welcome, happy Sunday, like that. Are you thinking of translating for big officials in the future? Then it could be a good chance for you to join Mr. Iku and the team. If you want to be great at graphics, join the PowerPoint and sound team. You want to deal with the fear of public speaking, start with the children's church. Sing, dance, and teach them. The list is endless, but you can find a place for yourself. The third attitude, the attitude of a sense of destiny. Unlike a lion that focuses on catching her prey for food, our destiny, our sense of destiny is God. We are not living for something on earth, or else our passion won't last. Our purpose is connected to something bigger than our existence. I liked it when Chimamanda Adichie, a great author, said, even if I was not published, I will be sitting somewhere writing. And an article on here who says this about Serena. She says she has never been motivated by money and never thought about checks. These two ladies have discovered something more important than life itself, something larger than themselves, something bigger than money. It's like, even if I was not paid, I'll still be doing this because it is in them, their purpose. They have discovered their purpose. Are we different? No, we are not. What we learn here is that God is not a respecter of persons, but he's a respecter of principles. It's a matter of drinking the cup of your purpose, and God will reward your faithful service. The last attitude, attitude number 4, is understanding God's providence. God is our purpose and destiny, and he that called us will definitely provide. When you understand that the Creator's providential hand is in your life, then you know that you're not just an experiment, but part of a larger program, orchestrated by God. Whatever God created something to do, he designed it with that ability. God created birds to fly and designed them with the ability to fly. In the same way, humans are born with the ability to lead. It is just a matter of time and season. Take the courage and step out into serving and trust God every step of the way. I want to conclude by quoting Edgar Z. Fredenberg, who says, "What we must decide is how we are valuable rather than how valuable we are." I'll repeat the quote. What we must decide is how we are valuable rather than how valuable we are. It is not how much value we have, but how much value we become in relation to God's kingdom. No matter your position or whatever you're doing, whether you're a secretary, a homemaker, raising children, working in a factory, a cleaner, or a doctor, whatever the way you're expressing your gifts out in the world, you want to always go with this attitude: I am here to serve. Thank you.